Welcome to the discussion. My name again, if you don't know, is David Bland. If you haven't seen the introductory video, I strongly encourage you to look at it. Not because I like attention, but frankly because there's a lot of people who want to tell you what to do. Okay? And many times they have no idea what they're talking about. Okay, so you ought to know a little bit about the person that you're listening to. Okay, so if you haven't seen the intro video, and it's just your first time with me, then I strongly encourage you to do so. And do so with anyone else you listen to. The second thing that I want to bring up first and foremost is I am not an attorney, nor am I an accountant and CPA. So some of the things we're going to talk about here today are important that you seek counsel if you have them of a more trained and certified nature. Okay? I'm going to tell you what I know, but it doesn't mean there aren't better experts. And if you can afford them, I encourage you to use them. What we're going to talk about today is about the structure of your business. Okay? Now that probably sounds a little confusing, or maybe you're not really sure what I'm talking about. There's a lot of topics we're going to cover. Okay, but the one today that we're going to talk about is what I would call the legal structure of how you're going to work. And there are a selection of choices. Okay. And so we're going to briefly, there'll be other videos that we'll talk about them in greater depth, and maybe at some levels what the advantages are and what their disadvantages are. I'll talk a little bit about it, but today we're going to make sure you understand what is the range of options you have. So let's talk about that. So the first way that you can organize your business is what's called a sole proprietor. Now, if you've ever opened a lemonade stand, you've ever washed cars for money, you've ever cut people's grass, you've ever done any of that, either as an adult or as a youngster, you have actually likely worked as a sole proprietor. What that really effectively means is you and you alone, sole, are in business, a proprietor. And you are doing that as an individual, and you are out there telling people you will provide goods or a service, and you'll do it under your own venue, if you will. Now, make no mistake, that doesn't mean you don't have a brand name or a doing business as name, right? If you're running a restaurant, it could be Joe's Restaurant, but in truth, you're just a sole proprietor whose name is Joe Smith, with a social security number, and when you make money doing this, that's how you report it. You report it on your annual taxes, you do it as a sole proprietor, and you do it under your social security number. Okay? So under a sole proprietor, it's just you providing what you do and what you know and what you sell to potential buyers in the marketplace. Okay? So you're all alone, there's nothing sophisticated about it, nothing complicated about it. Just like that lemonade stand. You can step out there and just start selling. There's not anything particular you need to do. Now, let me say this though, and it's true for all these. I say there's not anything particular you have to do, right? But almost every municipality has rules regarding businesses. And in particular, they want you to have a business license, right? So there's lots of permits and things of that nature that apply to opening your business. And that's all locally dependent. And there's lots of sources for you to find the information that's unique to you. And so I encourage you, in fact, I insist that you do that, because if you don't do it, you can find yourself in trouble. What I'm talking about is the structure under which you make those applications. So if you're a sole proprietor, you're filing the taxes as an individual under your social security number, and it is really just you selling those products into the world. So thing number two, what's another choice? So you look around and you say, you know, I'd really like to be in business for myself, but Sally, my good friend, is part of this operation, and she's helped me think this thing through, and she's got some great ideas and some tremendous talent, and we both get along together really well, and so we want to do this together, which, by the way, frankly, I think it's a great idea, not to be by yourself. That's really hard. That is referred to, not surprisingly, as a partnership. Now, if you're going to do that, the first recommendation that I would give you is you guys need an agreement. Okay? Well, the partnership doesn't mean there's just two. Okay, it can be 3, it can be 5, it can be 10. Okay, it can be any number that you think is appropriate to go together and operate the business. But you guys all partner up, hence the partnership term, and you share. You share the risks, you share the work, you share the revenue, you share the profits, you share the liabilities. You split that up on some basis, and I don't mean the money. I'm talking about from a tax point of view, although you split the money up too. You decide how well it works, you all agree to it, everyone has to agree, particularly in a 2-member partnership, and you proceed forward. And each of you file your taxes each year as an independent share of the business, meaning that if you're going to make, we'll just say $1,000 a year. So in a 2-person partnership, you would likely each get $500, and you would report your taxes of your income of $500 on your tax return under your Social Security number, and Sally would do the same. Okay? So that's a partnership. Again, business licenses, all of those sort of things are still relevant to that structure on how to sell your business. And again, it's another area where you can just work by name, right? This is Ted and Sally's business, or you can come up with what I call a brand name, right? Which is really, and you may have heard this term, DBA, or doing business as. You'll find that on a lot of forms, particularly when you're filling out as a sole proprietor or as a partnership. You'll see people asking, are you doing business under a brand name? And it doesn't have to be registered. I mean, you might want to. It doesn't have to be recorded anywhere. It doesn't necessarily show up in a lot of places, but it's okay because you might want that to put on the front of your store, right, as a discrete example. So that's kind of how partnership works. Sole proprietor, right, you are all by yourself. You are it. You're everything. You make all the decisions. You take all the liabilities. Under a partnership, there's more than one of you. So you kind of have to agree, you kind of have to share, you have to kind of reach consensuses. And if you've lived for more than, I would say 4 years, because even people who are no longer toddlers have figured out that sometimes it's hard to agree with another person on what you want to do. I've watched my grandchildren learn that lesson. Proprietors in a partnership add benefits of you're not alone, but you add complexity in that you have to agree. So what's another choice? So it's something that you hear about every day, right? And Walmart is one. Westinghouse is one. CVS Drugs is one. These are things that are called corporations. Now, if that's confusing, it shouldn't be. And here's the way I want you to think about it. Corporations are just an independent entity or an independent thing. They are not you. Okay? Even if you are the only owner of the corporation is still not you. Now, you can't on your own, by yourself, independent of everyone else, form a corporation. Because corporations are separate entities, right? So the only way to form a corporation is to file with some U.S. state, at least in the U.S. And of course, the rules are different in other countries, but I'm sure they're very similar. Corporations have to be provided a charter, okay, which is a document that describes what they do, how they operate, what the rules are for their functioning, and what they think they're going to be doing for a living. And they have to be registered with the state and receive approval to exist because they are legally a completely separate thing. They are no longer you. Okay, now a word of caution. If you do a corporation, you need to keep in mind it is not you. And there's some reasons for doing corporations. It is not you because it is a separate legal entity. And so your corporate money is not your money. It belongs to the corporation. So if you start putting your personal expenses and you're paying for them with corporate money, or if you're paying for corporate expenses and you're not doing the right bookkeeping with your money, you are creating a accounting, IRS, and legal nightmare, up to and including what will invalidate your corporation and all the reasons why you created it in the first place. So please understand, if you choose to do a corporation, then you are actually creating another, not living, but another being, because that's what it is. Now there's multiple kinds of corporations. The two primarily that people think about, they're called a C corporation or an S corporation. Okay, and again, you can find this out by researching them uniquely, okay, or you can find it out from your legal counsel or advisor, all right, but the simple way to think about it is this. A C corp, they both have stock, okay, so if you form this corporation, you're actually going to be a stockholder in it. In a C corporation, it's structured so that, and just give you an example, Walmart, ExxonMobil, and Microsoft, those are all C corporations, which means essentially they have rules they have to operate under because they're a C corporation. They have board of directors, they have elected officers, they have to hold annual meetings of the board and the stockholders. They have to have records that they have done that, right? Because those are all the rules that keep it legitimate. And again, to be real simple, because we'll talk about this more in another session, the purpose of a corporation is to provide you some level of legal liability protection as an individual. Remember, if a corporation is a separate entity, if the corporation's operations did something wrong, even if you were the one at some level directing it, it's the corporation that's liable. It's not you as an individual. So, and again, there's some tax advantages and disadvantages. It's a very complicated decision to make, but that's part of why you do it, and that's the way the C Corp works. Okay, and so you have officers, and most likely the initial officer would be you, or a loved one, or your other partners in the business under the C Corp, whatever those cases may be. The second form of a corporation that is a legal corporation is a S Corp. Okay, and the advantage of the S Corp is it alleviates some of those more difficult and complicated rules that surround the C Corp. It makes your record keeping a little bit simpler, and to a large degree, S Corps distribute their income each year individually to the stockholders, as opposed to paying taxes individually. So again, this is a complicated matter when you start talking about corporations and the decisions to use them. Legal counsel, financial counsel, those are all important things to get. I'm not that guy for you. I'm the guy that's telling you what your options are. Okay, so one more thing to think about, as if you don't have enough already. There's another form that came into being, and I don't know exactly when, but it's been quite some time ago. C Corps used to be, and S Corps used to be the only things you could do, but the law decided, that's very complicated for very small folks and very small businesses that don't want to deal with all these things. And so they created this legal entity called a limited liability corporation. LLC, you may have seen that referred to in either literatures or companies you've dealt with or whatever the case may be. Again, a little bit like an S Corp, they simplify the record keeping process while providing, for the most part, the same kinds of legal protections. So they work very much the same. They are a separate entity. They get approved by your state government that allows you to do these things based on you making a filing. Their tax situation, again, it's simpler than a C Corp. But all those things are part of what you have to think about when you go to do these type of operations. At the end of the day, here's what I'd tell you. If you're trying to figure out how to do this, and which of these four options, and by the way, there's a ton of different types of LLC. There's a lawyer LLC, there's a doctor LLC, it gets crazy, okay? But in the end, they're all basically the same thing. When you're trying to think about what to do, here's the advice I give you. If you're just getting started, you have no background at all, and you want to operate, whether it's individually or with a friend, corporations of any kind, add complexity. And you could be making mistakes that you don't want to do. You can always take an existing business that's been run as a sole proprietorship or a partnership, and sometime in the future, turn it into a corporation. Okay? So if it scares you out of the gate, if you will, about all these things I'm telling you, then keep it simple. You're going to have enough challenges without making it hard from the start. Now, the second thing I'll say, it's also relevant to this topic, and then we'll wrap up. If you have a bigger than life ambition, and you think you're going to create a firm that will in fact grow so big that someday your objective is to take it public. By the way, that's the way I felt from the start. Then a C Corp is the way to do it, because that's the way most publicly traded companies are held. So again, kind of to recap, make sure you know your choices. You have 4 basic approaches in which to start your business. A sole proprietor, which is just you out there selling what you do. A partnership, which is you and some number of friends and associates who want to be in business together and can get along and can make joint decisions. A corporate entity, which the state approves for you and allows you to do both of those things I just mentioned at sole proprietor or partnerships, yet doesn't, but allows you to have some legal liability protection as an individual. And then finally, a legal liability corporation or LLC that works very much the same, gives you a lot of legal protection, really simplifies the bookkeeping from a legal point of view and a corporate book point of view you have to have. Okay, so that should get you started on thinking about how you want to do your business, and which, by the way, that's where you start. You have to know under what structure you're going to do work and take in money before you start taking in money. So that should give you some good ideas. We'll have more modules that are coming that will help you with some more of the decisions that you're going to face and help you segment and figure out how to operate your business as well. With that said, thanks for your time. Glad you're here. Hope I haven't bored you to death. Some of this stuff can be pretty dry, but it's important for you to know to run your business.